Ni hao, wish is Stephanie. Okay, so 5 minute June, 5 minute June, I can do this. So I had a total and complete boom brainstorm today about one of the things that might be one of the reasons why I have not been able to get to fluency in any language in my life before now, which I'm not there now, but I really hope that I can be at some point. So here's my scratchy note because I was at work and I just had to write it down really quick so I wouldn't forget it. So let's see if I can actually decipher my note. Video, my note to write a video. One of the main demotivators, which I could not figure out, was ERS or ORS. And yes, that distracted me for a good 30 seconds. One of the main demotivators for me equals, literally equals, because sometimes I think in math, discomfort in all caps. Of not knowing, again in all caps, except the of, because I'm used to titles, not putting caps of smaller like articles and prepositions and stuff. Anyway, I hate the stage of being, I'm still reading, I hate the stage of being familiar with of not being familiar with words or language, but not knowing. Nope, let me read that again. I hate the stage of being familiar with words or language, but not knowing what it means. So here's what I figured out. Because I'm having to really go rather quick with the vocabulary in HSK2, there's a lot of vocabulary that I hit today when I did my first HSK2 practice test. A lot of vocabulary that I recognized that I could even read in the characters without the pinyin if I needed to. And I could hear the sounds, not produce them well, yeah, because this is me we're talking about, and that takes longer. I'm not saying I can't do it, I'm not being that person, but I am saying that it takes time. A lot longer than some, I imagine, but you know what, it takes time. So there were all these words that I knew and that I could hear, not necessarily say, but that I didn't know the meaning of. And so, for example, there were a bunch of sentences where I knew everything in the sentence. I could literally read the sentence in bad tones, but I didn't know what it meant. And this part of language confuses me. And I really want to dive into this for another 2 minutes because this is not something I had really thought about until I was literally in the middle of this practice exam. It was during my breaks at work. I had to split it up, but I did time myself and I did it within the allotted time, just not all at once like you do during the actual test. So I did a full practice test for HSK2, and yes, I was wrong. The inference section that's in all of my chapters in the workbook is actually in the test. I just didn't notice it the first few times that I took a look at the test. So that's a disclaimer. But mostly I want to talk about this stage of recognizing words without understanding what they mean. Oh, this stage. Is there a word for this stage? I want to label everything. It doesn't need to stay in labels. Like, I love to plan, but my plans are flexible once they're made. I like to label things. They don't have to stay that label. I don't even need to keep the label once it's there, but I need to categorize. It's part of how my brain works. And so I want to have a word for this stage where you can recognize language, but you don't know what it means. There were a few instances actually verbally that I heard some stuff recently, and I thought, oh, I've heard that in the listening a million times. Once it was at the pharmacist yesterday. She said kunong. And I asked her if I said, Wei Shen Ma, will you take WeChat, which is WeChat Pay, which is how it's one of the digital payment systems. And I have 1 minute. And she said Kunong. And I was like, I recognize that. I can even see part of the characters because that's one of the cooler words, one of the words that I like the look of. And I couldn't figure it out. And then later in and I looked it up and I figured it out what it meant, and it made sense with what the scenario, but I was like, okay, I recognize it. I can even hear it clearly. I could write the pinyin, and I can't write the Hanza, but I could recognize it. And then later in a store, Taidwala, my tones are off. But the woman was saying that in conjunction to something we were pointing to and thinking about buying. It was a stationery store, so I'm guessing it was the wrong size or something. I don't know, but I had to look it up. But again, it was something I really recognized from the listening, but I couldn't figure out what it meant. I'm very uncomfortable with this stage. Knowing that, I can push past this, because past that stage is knowing. but it's really uncomfortable. Satyan.